My name is Taryn Stegman, and 8 years ago, I started this little storytelling series called Out of Little Fire. 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, the gallery kind of became more of a localized event, and we brought it online. So most of the people that are watching stories for Out of Little Fire are now you guys at home, which is kind of fun because the stories can be broadcast out to wherever we want it to go, as opposed to just this one space. This is season 8 of Out of Little Fire, and for this season, we decided to have long story format. So, or long format stories, long story format. Which means that instead of 4 storytellers telling 15-minute stories, we have 1 storyteller telling one 45-minute story, which has been really exciting to kind of have a more like a fulfilled story with a longer arc to it. But because we only have 1 storyteller, I promised the storytellers that I would tell a 5-minute icebreaker. Tonight, we have Rhonda Keyser, how do I say her last name? Keyser, right? Telling a story. And if you want to see her bio, it is directly in the link. I did not print it out tonight. I apologize for that, Rhonda. Monica, do you want to talk a little bit about what's going on in the gallery? You come up here.
Yeah, I think it's really.
This is Monica. Monica is the director of Open Source Gallery, and they just finished their yearly fundraiser, and I think made $36,000 a couple days ago. So.
Hello. Yes, so we are at Open Source Gallery today, and we are in the show of Soyeon Shin and Anthony Bodlovich. It's called Hold Please. And there's a whole bunch of beautiful hands that tell stories that they have worked through, and there's also like some suggested ritual that you can make or can participate in. And yeah, come by. It's still open for this weekend and also for the entire January. There, it's by appointment only. Yeah, so that's what we have going on right now. And there's more next. In the next How to Build a Fire, I will tell you more about the upcoming year.
Yeah. So what was I going to say? How long has open source been going on now for? 15 years. So this was the 15-year anniversary. It is so much different telling stories with a quiet room.
Yeah.
But it's kind of nice too. It's like,
Can we be rowdy?
it's more, it just feels like. All right, so this is a story for you. When I was 15 years old or 14 years old, I lived in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I went to a Irish Catholic or a Catholic high school, and I lived with 4 brothers. And because there was so much testosterone in the family, we were always fighting. And this particular fight takes the cake in the arc of my Irish Catholic upbringing. When I was 15, I had a brother who was in college at UNC Chapel Hill, and he was a freshman, and he had just come home to from his first time being back home. And for whatever reason, within 5 minutes of my brother being home, we were already locked up in fisticuffs. And I have no idea what we were fighting about, but it felt like one of those vengeance days for me, where I was like, this is going to be the fight that ends all fights. And so he bested me. Oh, and what was really funny was that there was a little tiny little school behind our house called Honeytown Farms, and it was a grade school, and that's where we would go at night during high school to drink. And we would all park our cars in the field. I was usually the DD because I'd been drinking for longer than these young rapscallions. And my friend Justin drove a giant Pontiac Parisienne, which is the largest station wagon ever made. And it had the wood side to it. So all of my friends came into my house to see this fight. And so imagine like 7 or 8 high school guys, my brother and I and my little brother watching this go down. And the only one pulling for my older brother was my little brother, because I had outnumbered him in fans, and I got my ass kicked. So this, I can't tell if this is going to hinge on like really crazy sounding or really funny. I'm hoping it's funny, because in my mind, it's one of the most hilarious fights of my life. And it was one of the last fights that ever went on between us. But because I was bested, what I did was my friend Josh, he drove a Saab, a gray Saab. And we always thought that was like the coolest shit, that like one of our friends had a Saab, and it had a CD player in it, which I'm old enough to be like, that was a big deal at the time, with a removable face, because people used to steal CD players from cars back then. Anyways, and so my friend Josh had 2 things in his car that I wanted to bring back into the house to best my brother. First was a pellet gun. So I went out to Josh's car after getting my tail kicked by my brother, and I brought back in a pellet gun. And I went right into the back of the kitchen, and instead of shooting my brother with a bunch of pellets, I took aim at my mother's favorite crucifix and just blasted it as many times as I could. I just unloaded as many pellets as I could into our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And I put a couple extra holes in Jesus that day. And what was really funny about that is that crucifix hangs in my mother's house to this very day. And I'm 43 years old now, and that was when I was 14, 15. And I must have been older than that, because they were driving. Anyways, but I can still see the pellet holes in Jesus this very day. And I'm like, and then because I was shooting up Jesus, and my parents weren't there. It was just my brothers and me and all of my friends. Because I was shooting up Jesus, my brother felt like I deserved a second ass kicking, and he's probably correct. And so I ran back to my room, which was in the back of the house, and jumped out of my back window, went back to Josh's car, and got one of those baseball bats that you get like at a game, you know, like the small kind of souvenir bats. And I ran back inside the house, and I blasted him over the back of the head, and it shattered everywhere. And that was like, and everybody's like, whoa, there's gonna be this awesome like 3rd round of a fight, right? And I remember like just watching this thing like turn into like, I get like just pummeled. And it was so funny, because it was just pieces of wood flying everywhere. And so it looked like a cartoon of a fight, where like I had a weapon and then it was gone. I was looking at it, and my brother's holding the back of his head, kind of in disbelief. And I'm like, oh, that was insane. And there's just like this, you know, like a toothpick left in my hand. And I was like, oh man, I've done it now. And so I went the same route to get out that I did last time, jumped out of my back window, went back to Josh's car, and said, Josh, I'm going to have to spend the night in your car tonight, because this is not going to go well when my parents get home and see Jesus all holy up. Sean's got a big lump in the back of his head. Casey's going to tell the story in Sean's favor. He's going to be calling balls and strikes, and it's not going to look good for the home team. So anyways, I said, Josh, I'm spending the night in your car. And Josh is like, I don't know what you're going to do to get this blow over. You're probably going to get in a lot of trouble. And I'm like, I am going to get in a lot of trouble. So Josh went home and got all of his Halloween candy. He said, I don't know how long this is going to hold you over for, Terry, but here's all of my Halloween candy. And I was like, oh, that's really good of you to feed me with all of your Halloween candy. And the next day, this is the end of the story. The next day, and doesn't seem like a far distance when you tell it, because if you just think about a map, North Carolina and Florida seem close. But the very next day, I got on the highway and hitchhiked my way down to Jacksonville, Florida, just to have it kind of blow over. Yep, called my dad from a payphone in Jacksonville. Dad, I'm in Jacksonville. Can't get me down here. And then the rest of the story is from one day. So.
That's amazing. Well, that's kind of hard to follow because I don't think I'm as much of a badass as Terrence or Terry will say. Because we don't know if Terrence is a badass. We know that Terry was in that story. Yes.
So hard to hear from here.
Okay. So should I turn this
Yeah, I
way?
do this. Hey.
You don't have to hold.
This is kind of like the auditions. Like you go to an audition and you're like, "Hi, Rhonda Keyser." You're just like piece of cattle, like teeth are okay. Okay, so there was part of the story that I was going to tell tonight that I rejected because I didn't feel like it fit, but I have to say this because Terry was shooting up Jesus, and when I was a little girl, I used to play by myself a lot. No, I know. But so I went to church a lot when I was little, and also I wanted to be famous. So because of the church thing, and I felt like, well, I can't really be famous unless I help people. And I really thought that at one point it was going to be revealed that I was the second coming of Jesus Christ. I think it was also women's lib thing. It was like a mashup of like wanting to be famous, having a religious like education, and then also not education, but like upbringing, and then also the women's lib thing, like women can be Jesus too, kind of thing. Anyway, so I did play a lot by myself when I was little, and when I was up until I was 3, we lived in this old Victorian house with these floor to ceiling windows. And it was really fun. There were so many places to play, like imaginary moments abounded all day long, when I was with my mom and before she went off and got a job, and I had to go to a babysitter, which was also in a Victorian house, which was kind of floor to ceiling windows and kind of scary. But this one was cut up into apartments, and so there were these grand stairs when you came in, and I would sit, at the end of the banister of one of them, and it had like this big, like, what's it called, a spindle or something? I don't know. What's it called when it's the end of it? Whatever it was, I used to sit there, and sometimes I was a teacher from there teaching my students, and then the spindle coming up in between. Sometimes it was a horse. Sometimes I was like, whatever, all the things that a kid could be when you're pretending. And so we lived on the first floor of all these cut up apartments, and I used to go to bed every night. My brother and I had a bedroom, which was the formal living room. I think that's what it was. And so there were it was this big giant room, and all these like shadows in different parts of the room. And then these big floor to ceiling windows with no window treatments to cover them. And so I would see these big like evergreen trees that were outside, and they were going like this, and they looked like, I always was afraid. I was terrified. Like every night I would go to sleep like this. Like I swear every muscle in my body was so tense, and I had stuffed animals on either side of my bed, and I was just like this because I was sure that those like waving trees in the wind were like men waiting to break in, and they were just like talking amongst themselves, and they were gonna break in, and I used to be like, please, and I would call out like 5 times, and my mom would be like, stop, because she was a young mom and just like tired of dealing with her kids, and I needed to just go to bed. We all know that, parents, we've been there. But anyway, it wasn't until like 10 years later my parents started telling this story about that time period. And my dad would go to bed early, and my mom would stay up late smoking and like watching TV to just like have her me time kind of. And suddenly she hears this bang, 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 bang. Let me in, they're after me. And so she ran to get my dad, and my dad, we're from a really small town in Virginia, and my dad was from the country. It's like an even smaller part. And he came shooting out of the bed, got his rifle because there was danger, and he had his t-shirt, a white t-shirt on and tighty whities with his rifle. And then there's a man on the other side of these floor to ceiling windows who's in a white t-shirt and tighty whities, and he's got brambles and mud all over him. And my mom was like, what are you doing? He was like, come on, let me in, they're after me, they're gonna get me, they're gonna get me. And my dad was like, you stay right there. And my mom, he was like, go call the police. And so she called the police, and they were like dealing with that for a little bit of time. And then then the police got there, and what they realized was he was an escapee from a local mental asylum. And so they were like, phew, I can't believe that happened. Phew. And they weren't even like, oh, we dodged a bullet, or that was really scary. They were just like, what a crazy thing to have happen. So they used to tell that story, and it was like, here's these two men on either side of this floor to ceiling window, one with a rifle, the other with brambles and mud. And it's funny because I used to go to bed, like terrified. And my parents were like, just relax, it's fine. And I feel like looking back on it, it was only this week when I was getting ready to tell this story that I feel like that must have imprinted on me somehow. And when I was terrified of going to sleep at night, that must have been in my somehow energy field or consciousness or whatever. And little did I know that would be like a theme kind of in my life, oddly. Later on, not too much later, I was very young and I had eye surgery. And they were so great. It was like the first time I went to the eye doctor, my eye had a turn in, like I had a amblyopia, it was called. And so my parents were terrified. They were young, they were just early 20s. They had gotten married very early, and I was their second child. And here's this thing that's happening, and they're terrified. And so they took me to the doctor, like across the mountain. Everything that we had to do that was big was across the mountain always. And so they went across the mountain, and they took me to this doctor, and he was like, oh, it's fine. But everything goes against your instinct as a human being to let somebody get an eye thing to touch close to your eye. And the first time I was there, I was a fit to be tied. And I was just like, no, you can't do this. And I couldn't believe that my parents were letting him do this to me, and that he was doing it, and all of that crazy stuff. And then at one point, my mom slapped me. That made me more like freaked out, which probably made her terrified and feel terrible. They ended up giving me some kind of drug. And when I left, like the doctor always liked to tell, like, yeah, the first time you came in here, you were like hard to deal with. And then we gave you that drug, and you were like a drunken sailor by the time you left here. And so like, then there's more like, it's just like, that's the next little, I mean, it's not really the next little moment of terror probably, but like, because everything probably was interpreted as terror. So then just going back in time generationally, my grandparents met at a train wreck. She was 14, and she and her friend and her friend's boyfriend heard about this train wreck at the other end of the county, and they drove down to this tiny little area, like little hamlet, and where there was a fill-in station as they called it. And right across from that was this big railroad trestle, and the train had gone off of it. It was a freight train. So there's no like drama with passengers, but people were all watching. Crowds had gathered because there's no TV really in town that people had. So people were like watching it. And my grandmother just told me this story when I was an adult. She said, yeah, I was in the back seat of the car, and we decided to fill up with gas before we went back. And there was this man with the prettiest blue eyes I ever did see. And I said, oh my gosh, Grandma, what did you do? And she said, well, he reached his head in the back of the car and he said, well, you're right cute. What's your name, Luke? And she goes, Lorraine. And so then she got out of the car and they started talking. And I said, Grandma, did you flirt with him? And she was like, well, he was pretty handsome. So she was 14 at that time and he was 35, I think. And yeah, I heard someone say, when I told this story to my therapist, and I thought it was so cute, she was like, wait, you know he was a pedophile, right? So they were talking and then he said, well, do you reckon your pa would shoot me if I came calling on you? And she said, you could try. And so obviously wanting him to. And so then he went to see her dad and said, I'd like for her to work for me because, you know, my wife, I'm a widower, and I've got 3 kids, one of whom was older than she was. And I'd like her to keep house for me and sort of take care of my kids and see what can happen. And so she gladly did it, and they let her go because they had, you know, blended family, I think. And so it was a kind of a relief for them. And after a year, he said, well, I reckon it'd be cheaper if I married you. And I was like, well, that's the most beautiful proposal I've ever heard, Grandma. And so anyway, so they got married, but you know, she was telling me that story and I was like, we were in the house that she moved into. And I said, okay, wait a second, Grandma. So Bobby slept in this bedroom and so-and-so slept in this bedroom, but Doris slept in this bedroom, and your other Evelyn slept in this bedroom. Where did you sleep? And she went, well, I had to try it out to see if I liked it. And so of course he would say, I reckon it'd be cheaper if I married you, because they were kind of living with, they were married anyway. So they got married, they went on this beautiful honeymoon to Niagara Falls. And there's this great picture of the two of them. They look like gangsters, and it's taken in a photo booth, and it's sort of immortalized in our family because they're just so like, they look so cute, and she looks terrified but also happy. And he took her to the dentist that day for the first time, and he spilled acid on her lips, so it's really full. She has these really full lips. And so anyway, so that's that's how that all shook out with my grandma on my dad's side. But then, you know, years later, before I even knew that story, I got engaged to Denver, who's here tonight, in a car wreck. We were going to his brother's rehearsal, and the rehearsal dinner. We had just been to the wedding rehearsal, and then Denver was driving my car, and he pulled out, and someone came in and just went around another car, and he didn't see them, and then the other person came and sandwiched us, and we conked our heads together, and it was like we instantly both went unconscious. But Denver, of course, has to take care of everything, as we know from his story, that he and so he was awake right away, and he got out and was walking around, and every time I would wake up, I was like, Denver, what are you doing? And then I'd go back to sleep. He'd be like, it's okay. And I was like, okay. So then the ambulance finally came. This is the part that I know. There's a lot more details of this that I don't really know from my point of view, but like the ambulance came, and so the next time I wake up, I'm in the back of the ambulance, and I'm strapped to a backboard, and I'm like this, and I see the lights going like this in the ambulance, and I wake up and I'm like, where am I? What am I doing? And some woman comes, there's a nurse, and she's like, it's okay, it's all right. You've been in a car accident. Everything's okay. I said, what car accident? Oh my God, where's Denver? And Denver's in the front of the ambulance, and he goes, it's okay. It's all right, Rhonda. And I went, oh, okay, clunk. And so then we went into the ambulance, and it's York City in Pennsylvania on a Friday, right? Not a Saturday. Anyway, and in the hospital, you know, right there in the emergency room, there's all these people. There's like, according to Denver later, like there was a guy with a plate sticking out of his head, which I'm never really sure to believe that or not. But I'm just going to take it for this story. And like, there was another guy, there was another guy, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have told her that. And she stuck the plate in my head. Anyway, so then we're both in adjacent trauma bays, and the doctor comes in and he says, well, how are you? And the nurse starts asking me questions. What happened exactly? And I'm like, well, I don't know. He pulled out and then somebody hit us. It's not our fault, that's for sure. And the nurse goes, okay, was there any alcohol involved? And I said, no, we were not drinking. We just came from the church. And like, I was like the indignant person in an emergency. So, then Denver then pulls back the curtain to the trauma bay after, the doctor comes in and he goes, okay, so let's just see. And he takes his finger up my one foot and he goes, okay, can you feel that? I said, yeah. He goes, okay, can you move that foot? And I said, it was my left foot. I said, yeah, sure. And then he goes up my right foot and he goes, can you feel that? I said, yeah. And he goes, can you move it? And I went, no, I can't. And he goes, okay, great, I'll be right back. And then I'm just lying there and I'm like, oh my God, is he going to get a saw? Like, is he going to ask me before he cuts it off? Or like, is he just going to do it? Is he going to send it home with me in a, like my foot in a box? Or is he going to ask my parents? I know I'm of age, but like, is he going to ask somebody? Or is he just going to do it? And then Denver pulls back the curtain to the trauma and he goes, what happened? What's the matter? And I said, I just think he's going to cut off my foot. And he goes, oh, they don't do that anymore. It's okay, relax. And I said, okay. He goes, and I said, but I'll never act again. Like, I'll never like be the actress I want to be. Because Sarah Bernhardt's foot got cut off. It's okay. And so I was like, didn't even know if that was true or not. But at the time, I was like, okay, all right, then it's all right. And then he goes, his little face, the doctor came around, the police officer came around, was asking questions, and Denver kept trying to answer, and I was kind of going in and out of consciousness, and he was like, I'm sorry, because he was losing like his focus a little bit. So he kept saying, I'm sorry. I said, Denver, do not admit guilt. It was not your fault. You stop that right now. And he was just like, I'm not, it's okay, relax. So then afterwards, after they left, he goes, oh my gosh, Rhonda, I'm so glad we're both still alive and we're still together. I said, me too. I love you so much. And he goes, I love you too. Will you marry me? And I said, no. Yes, I gotta throw up. And so I did. I threw up blood. I threw up blood because I had a concussion, because our heads hit when we got sandwiched between two cars. So yeah. So I was thinking, no, you totaled my car. I'm not gonna marry you. And then I thought, well, yes, that's probably the coolest proposal I'll ever get. And then I was like, then I had to throw up. So like, those were the like thinking behind those three answers. So, and, after like years later, I was thinking about that. I was like, oh my God, there's a pattern in my life where there's always emergencies. And, and so much so that my daughter recently said, I'm always like, what would my one woman show be called? As if, I'm really going to do that now. But she was like, I think your one woman show should be called Emergency. And I was like, oh my God, she gets me. She really gets me. That's what it would be called. And I feel like that's kind of what this is called in some ways. So I was like, oh my God, there's a crazy, pattern of emergencies. After my eye surgery, but before I got engaged, I was little and I had a fever for like a couple of days, and I had this weird fever dream where there was, I think I had to go to the bathroom. Usually your nightmares are because you have to go to the bathroom or something's uncomfortable about you, or it's too hot in the room, or you're thirsty or something. But like, I had this crazy fever dream where I wanted to get up and go to the bathroom, but there was somebody hovering in the corner of my room, on the doorway, in the corner of the doorway. And he was going like that. And it was kind of menacing, but it didn't intend to be menacing, but it felt like I can never go past through that room, that doorway, because he's going to get me or something like that. And it's crazy because I screamed and my parents came in the room because I was sick. So they weren't just like, just go back to sleep. They were like, oh, it's okay. So then they said, go to the bathroom and come back. So then, you know, years later, I saw this dance piece that was a Belgian dance troupe where it was called Mountain Made of Barking. And it was a Belgian composer and choreographer. And he was like, there were all these crazy, weird things that happened that were nightmares. And it was all about nightmares. And one of the things was like a guy takes off all his clothes, water comes out, he showers, and then another spigot comes out and puts dirt all over him, his wet body, and then he gets dressed into a business suit with that dirt on. Like, that's just one of the crazy nightmares. And there were a bunch of really, it was such a beautiful piece. It was Wim van de Kee was the artist, but in the middle of it, there was a guy in the corner of the room. Oh yeah, the guy was laughing, but he was also like, like that. And it's weird because like later on when I went to college, I studied languages. I studied French from high school, but then I took a year of German in high school. I continued that in college. So I studied French, German, I added Russian and Chinese because I just wanted to know languages. I just wanted to know like things that were unknowable at the time to me. So I told Denver the time, my husband, and I was my fiance at the time, that dream. And he was always like, that's crazy. That's a crazy dream. It's so weird. Like he never asked, what does a dream mean? But it was very there's just a symbology in that. It's just interesting. So we were in the middle of the show and there was a guy in the corner of the room, like German, speaking German, and telling like in the style of stand-up, like, and I don't remember enough German to say something to pull this off, but like he was just like, and it was so like, I was just like, oh my God, that's my dream. That's so weird. This must be a common dream. And Denver, it was so familiar to him. And I had only told him like once or twice that dream we had talked about. He grabbed my arm and he goes, are you okay? Are you okay? I know, so I had to take care of everything. I know Terrence's look on his face is so sweet. He was like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, oh my God, that's crazy. And then I told my dad about that dream and he said, I think that was a birth dream because your anesthesia, you were born as a cesarean, like you were a scheduled C-section and the anesthesiologist was German.
Wow.
And he was very jokey and making jokes and laughing and stuff like that. But so I was just like, oh my God, that's crazy. Like all of these like crazy like things coming back. But so, okay, so all that crazy stuff happening. So Denver and I are engaged. We moved to New York. Right after we moved to New York, like 6 months after we got here, and we came because I'm an actress and I wanted to break in. And like 2 months in, I had just worked like 3 doubles. I was a night secretary, but then you could work temp during the day to make more money. And so we were getting ready to move and we needed deposit, security deposit and all that stuff. So I went into the car because we got a car home. And I went to the car with the 2 other night secretaries that I had bonded with, and one of them being Karen Rivas. And I said, I just started crying. I just started sobbing. And they were just like, what's wrong? When I could finally manage to talk, I couldn't talk. When I could finally manage to talk, I was just like, I just thought that I would already have like a national commercial by now. And I'm still a night secretary and there's no hope of getting out of it. And it was just like terrible. Like it was like, and it was just like, I think New York was like, huh, buckle up, honey. You're in it for the long haul. But so I got through that, and I had thought, like, I had planned, like, okay, 2 months in, I'll have a national commercial, I'll get an agent, and then by the time 6 months rolls around, I'll be able to quit my job because I'll have a couple national commercials, and then I'll start doing like plays and all kinds of stuff. Well, about 4 months in, I was coming home from improv rehearsal one Sunday afternoon, and my train was rerouted. I got off of Dumbo instead of Brooklyn Heights on the A, and it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I was pretty like comfortable and loose, and Dumbo wasn't completely, that neighborhood wasn't completely gentrified yet. So it was like a lot of artist loft at that time and everything. So I got out, I saw a guy just kind of standing around waiting. And there was another guy on a payphone. He kind of was looking at him. I was like, does he want to use the payphone? Are they communicating about something? So I turned the corner and I was like, I'm going to keep an eye on this guy because there's the Manhattan Bridge as soon as I come up, and it's going to be really loud. And then there's a lot, like a empty lot next door to the Manhattan Bridge, and he could pull me in there and do whatever he wanted to do. So I was just like, I turned the corner, I took 2 steps up, I grabbed the railing, and as you can probably guess, because I'm drawing this out, as soon as I turned to look, I felt this arm go around me. And I was like, wow, this is how I'm gonna die. I can't believe that, because suddenly I was the back of the crowd, and all the people would just like disappear around the corner. And I was like, oh my God. So I really hadn't taken any self-defense courses, but the only thing I had ever taken was a lifeguarding course. And that was the hold I knew how to get out of. So I just kind of put my, hands between and tucked my chin in and turned to the side so that I could breathe. And I was like, I couldn't get much air in. I was just like, help, just like a dream, right? When you have a dream and you can't scream. So I was like, help, help. And nobody heard me, of course, because the Manhattan Bridge is up there and nobody's thinking about it. It was like some art walk day. So there were a lot of new people in the neighborhood. Anyway, so then we had a big struggle. He stood on my right foot, and I broke 2 bones in my foot and 1 bone at the top of my arm. And I had all this muscle tissue damage. It was crazy. And then the cops came, they took the report, and they drove me home. And then they said, do you want us to call you an ambulance? And I was like, no, we don't really have health insurance. So he goes, we'll take you to the hospital. So I got collected Denver at the apartment, and we went to the hospital, and we're sitting there waiting because we didn't come in on an emergency vehicle. So we're just waiting. And he was just like, I just turned to him in the middle of it. I was like, this better fucking well help my acting career. Always keep it in class. So, I healed, and things were like, I did kind of slow things down after that. And really, like, I was like doing a lot of things that I didn't necessarily want to be doing. So I just like stopped and only took gigs that I, non-paying gigs that I wanted to be doing, that I felt like advanced what I wanted to be doing as an actress. And so it was good in that way. But so, then we were just living our lives and doing our thing. And then 9/11 happened. And Denver was a visiting artist down in North Carolina at the time, and for like a couple of days. And I woke up, I had just worked a double the day before. And then so I woke up in the morning to sirens, because we lived in Brooklyn Heights, right across the river, people who don't live in New York. Anyway, our building shook from the second plane hitting. And I know that there's like lots of incredible first person stories from that day, but I couldn't get through to Denver. Denver's mom called, she got through to me, we talked about it. I didn't really understand what was going on, even though I could see the Twin Towers from our kitchen window. And as I started piecing together what happened, quickly, I instantly filled up the bathtub with water, and I filled up anything that could be frozen, any container that could be frozen with water that was drinkable, and put it in the freezer. Because I was like, they're going to hit the water supply next, then they're going to hit the electricity, and I want there to be as much ice in the freezer as possible. And then I packed a bag, and I was like, water's not going to be worth anything. Money's not going to be worth anything. So I'm going to pack medicines to trade. I'm going to pack things that are valuable that people will want to trade. And I was like, anything I had, like cold medicine, aspirin, which I didn't have. We didn't have very much of that at the time. So I was like, and it's funny because later on I learned that for people who are like walking around kind of mentally wired, and very often like the people who are considered insane that you see on the street during emergencies, they don't seem as insane. And it's because the inside finally matches the outside. And I feel like that was like my moment of zen. It was like, oh, this is the moment I've been training for all my life. I know how to do this. I totally know how to do this. Like I didn't take a shower for like 2 days because I was afraid. We were really close to the Brooklyn Bridge, and I could see people streaming over the Brooklyn Bridge walking home from Manhattan saying, want to take the train. And I thought they were going to storm the building because they wanted to get in because there was some gas happening outside, or some kind of air attack with poison gas being dropped down. And that never came to pass, thank heavens. But I mean, for me and for them. But also, and I was just afraid that some other emergency was going to happen. So I just wouldn't take a shower until 2 days later. My next door neighbor came home. It happened and she was in Manhattan. She just stayed with her friends. And I was like checking on her cats and feeding them and stuff. When she finally came home, we just sat down and watched Christiana Amanpour together. And we were just like, whatever you say. And she was like, you got to go take a bath or shower or something. It's going to make you feel better. And so it was really nice. She goes, I'll tell you if something bad's happening, and then you can get out of the shower. And so like put out my clothes that I could put on really quickly in case something happened. So anyway, so that moment was really like a moment of like where I realized my value, like the value of my background. And like every person I tell that story to is like, okay, you're going to be on my end of the world team.
That's so funny.
Really? Yeah. Well, and it's funny because later on, as I don't know where this fits in, but like I took this self-defense class that was free for survivors of survivors of violence. And one of the things they taught you with coping skills is that when you're on the train, the subway stops, if you're nervous, if something makes you nervous, I think I sort of put it together with some stuff that they told you, but like I started to like look around and cast my team that would get us through whatever emergency happened. I was like, that guy is going to help me hold people off. This woman is going to hug me. I'm going to say, please, I need you to hug me. And like, this person is going to sing to people. This person is going to make us all like calm us down. Like I had like a role for everybody who seemed like they were, you can just kind of see when people have energy coming off of them, that that they can work in a situation, like in a emergency situation. So that's what I started to do, like make my little apocalypse team. So yeah, so afterwards, we moved out of Brooklyn Heights because we lived below a cell phone antenna. When we were on the 5th floor, and there was a cell phone antenna on the roof, and I was pregnant, and I was like, okay, this baby's in my womb right now. I'm protected by all the everything, but I don't know what's going to happen when it comes out, and I want to be in a place without a cell phone antenna on the roof. So we got to a bigger apartment. We needed that, and so we moved to this place that was really spacious and pretty cheap, and it was in Cobble Hill. And so people were like, oh, and you're right across from this great elementary school. And I was like, I don't care about that, which later I definitely did. But it was so great and so wonderful, but we didn't realize that there were tons of leaks and there was toxic mold. I mean, there was some like moment where the roofer came and they were trying to fix it and make it all better, but they, I'm just making sure, oh my God, it's 10:09. Okay, so they were trying to fix it, but the roofer took the roof off and left it off, and there was this big thunderstorm. So any toxic mold that was happening was even worse, and there was rain coming in from front to back of our apartment, and it was horrible. And even though I knew that mold was going to grow and that I'm really allergic to mold, it still took a while because we didn't see it growing. It was behind the walls. All the walls are plaster, so mold doesn't grow. It grows on drywall, but not plaster. as well. So we couldn't see it, but we were breathing it in, and it was making us like foggy, and Denver had all these terrible fevers and all this stuff. And so all of that toxic mold was insane, and it took us a while to finally move out of there. And when we moved out of there, I was trying to salvage our stuff because it still smelled like mold, and I couldn't be around it because my lungs were so compromised at that point. And we ended up getting rid of like 97% of our stuff. I was taking stuff, we were on the 5th floor again in the new apartment, and I was taking stuff up to the top of the roof, and letting the sun bake it and seeing if that would just like be a nice antiseptic to, you know, mold killer. But it wasn't working out. I went and I would wash all of our clothes, and like I would have a thing piled this high and like 2 bags, and I would wash that many clothes at the laundromat up the street so many times. And it's the woman who worked there. I was going to get more change one day, and I'd been there for like a week straight. And she was like, I was waiting, and then some guy comes in to pick up his laundry that they had done for them and for him. And she goes, oh, do you mind? I just want to take the customer first. So I was like, oh my God, she thinks that I'm washing other people's clothes for money, like I'm a for hire lady. And I was like, wow, that's really interesting. How do I feel about that? That's not who I am, but is it bad that that's what she thinks I am? And another day I was coming up the street with a similar amount of laundry, and there was a man looking at me. He was like dressed, not in a suit, but like he was like an advertising kind of guy, and he was very fashionable looking and dapper. And I saw him, and he just kind of looked at me and looked away really quickly. And I was like, oh my God, he doesn't know who I am. Like he has no idea. And then I was like, that's just the outside of us. Like, that's just, and suddenly I started looking at everybody differently. Like I would look at people and say, oh, that's whoever they are. Like it's their soul. Like, and I started to grapple with like, what is that? Like, who are we interacting with? Is it the shell of us? Is it what we put forth, or is it what we see, or whatever? And so during that time, it was like, kind of like there was so much going on inside my head. As my head was getting clearer and clearer, the further away from the mold we were, the more I was like, oh my God, this is, it was life-changing, but it was also like I was completely broken down in some way. And we were moving out of our apartment. Before we moved completely, we're moving out of our apartment back into our apartment and living with people who were nice enough to have us stay in their extra room. And then we went to this apartment, and then we were moving back one day, and we had all this stuff, including like a frying pan. And I was pushing Maybelle, and she was like 4, and I was pushing her in a stroller, and it started raining. And I was like, oh my God, does everything have to be so fucking hard? Like, it's just like, how terrible. We're just trying to make this the most healthy place, like a healthy environment and all of this stuff. And all of a sudden I said to Mabel, I'm so sorry. And she said, what? Because she just really didn't hear me. And I thought to myself, well, I can't impose that on her. This might not be a tragedy for her. And why am I going to front load it by saying, I'm sorry, and this is terrible, and frame it for her? And so I thought I would just ask her a question. And I said, Maybelle, if you wanted anything to be different in your life, like if you had any wish for anything to be different, what would that wish be? And she said, promise you won't tell Papa? And I was like, oh my God, she's going to say something about him, or she's going to say we're fighting too much because it was such a tense time, or I don't even know what. And I said, okay, I promise. And she said, I just wish fairies were real. And I was like, oh my God, me too. I was just like, oh my God, like all this emergency and all this stuff, and this is all she knows of a life. This is her life. And we've done our best to make her life as magical as possible. And I think it feels magical to her. Maybe she's received some of my anxiety and emergency. I'm sure she has, and for that, I'm really sorry. But I will also say that I've suddenly started thinking that, fairies can be real, and it's okay for things not to be an emergency, and it's okay for things not to be fear driven, and that we can have fear and let it dissolve. And I would like to just end with a quote if I can, and I have to look at a note for that. And it's a quote that's often attributed to Nelson Mandela, but it's actually Marianne Williamson, if you know this quote.
That's okay for now. You go ahead.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So it's our deepest fear is not, get choked up, is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous, and not have mold in my house? Actually, who are you not to be? You're a child of God. Your playing small doesn't serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine. And as we're liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. So that's the next chapter of my life. Thank you all. That was the intake session for my therapist,
It was
my new
really great.
therapist.
I want to give you.
I know.
Good night, everybody. We shall see you next month at our normal time, which is going to be the last Friday of the month, which is January something. And you can look on the website to see who's going to be telling a story. And we'll see you then.